As you navigate your day, have you ever considered if your most ordinary tasks could be something more than just routines, perhaps even sacred? Today we're doing a deep dive, really challenging our common perceptions to maybe unveil a truly transformative understanding of how we live our lives. Our mission really is to explore how every moment, every seemingly mundane task can be infused with a deeper, maybe even divine meaning.
Yeah, and it's important to say this isn't about like piling more obligations onto an already busy life. Not at all. It's more about a fundamental shift in perspective, right?
Mhm.
A reorientation of our hearts and minds. And that shift can profoundly change the quality of our presence, our sense of purpose, and, well, ultimately our peace. Seeing the sacred in the everyday.
That's a powerful invitation. And we really want to challenge you, our listener, to think about how this re-envisioning could resonate, not just as an idea, but practically, in your own daily life. So let's unpack this a bit. Okay, so for many of us, when we hear the word worship, what comes to mind? Often it's, well, specific images, maybe uplifting music, a Sunday service setting, or perhaps just a quiet moment of prayer. It often feels confined, right, to a particular place, a specific time, maybe a dedicated activity. And that's, a foundational understanding for many people. But what if there's more, a much grander truth sort of waiting there?
Exactly. And while that conventional understanding is absolutely valid and it's deeply meaningful for so many, it might fall a little short of a much more expansive, kind of all-encompassing truth. What we're delving into today suggests that worship isn't just something we do maybe on Sundays or, in a quiet prayer closet. It's actually about how we live every single day. It's less a segment of our lives and more like the very fabric of our being, woven through every action, every interaction.
And this whole concept, it's anchored somewhere specific, isn't it? Well, a profoundly challenging but also liberating passage, a real foundation for how we're called to live. It comes from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 1, and it really does shift the paradigm.
It really does. That verse states, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." Now let's lean into the depth of that for a second, the imagery. A living sacrifice. It's incredibly potent. In the Old Testament, sacrifices were typically dead animals, offered once, done. But here, Paul is calling us to be living sacrifices. That implies something continuous, active, a conscious dedication of ourselves. It's not a one-time event. It's more like a moment-by-moment offering.
Okay, so it's not just about giving something up, but about who we are becoming,
Yeah.
how we engage. And what does it mean for our bodies to be offered? Is that just like our physical selves, or is it bigger than that?
Oh, it's much bigger, far more than just the physical body. In this context, bodies really refers to our entire self. Think about it. Our intellect, our will, our emotions, our talents, our time, our choices, all of it. It really encompasses all our capacities, all our faculties. The verse is urging us to dedicate our whole being, our entire existence, to a higher purpose. It's a complete, holistic offering of who we are every single day in every single part of life. And that phrase, "this is your true and proper worship," some translations say spiritual worship or even reasonable service,
Hmm.
which suggests this kind of worship isn't just emotional. It's deeply rational, thoughtful, lived out. It involves the whole person.
Wow. Okay, so practically speaking, that completely transforms things. I mean, looking at our daily routines, our everyday choices, even the most, ordinary interactions and relationships, seeing them as constant opportunities to honor a divine purpose, to live out our deepest convictions authentically. It really does redefine what a life of devotion looks like.
Yeah. Absolutely. It changes the whole approach. It becomes about living with profound intention and deep gratitude. We start becoming aware, constantly aware, of a higher presence in every space we occupy, every task we take on. And importantly, this isn't about putting on a show for anyone, right? It's not performing for validation. It's more about an internal disposition, a quiet, abiding knowledge that permeates everything we do, every thought. It's kind of a journey from external ritual to internal reverence.
Okay, let's make this really tangible. Because it sounds great in theory, but how does it actually look? Let's explore a couple of, well, powerful examples that really illustrate this idea of everyday worship.
Hmm.
The first story that really struck me is about a high school custodian. This was in rural Alabama, just back in 2023. Apparently, he was known throughout the school, not just because he did his job well, very meticulously, but also for his incredibly kind spirit. And he had this habit of singing hymns while he mopped the halls. His presence just became part of the school's rhythm, like a gentle, uplifting soundtrack to the day.
Hmm. And his joy, it was so consistent, so evident that students and staff actually started asking him about it. They were intrigued. Why was he always so cheerful? And his response was profoundly simple, but just so inspiring. He apparently just said, "This job is my worship. Every floor I clean, I do it like I'm doing it for the Lord." Think about that. His attitude didn't just impact him, it reportedly transformed the culture of the entire school. It's such a clear example of how one person's presence, when it's infused with that spiritual perspective, can uplift a whole environment, turning a routine task into a powerful witness.
That's amazing. Taking something often unseen or maybe undervalued and making it spiritually vibrant. And it's not just limited to a workplace setting, right? We see similar shifts even in those really mundane personal routines. Like, take the example of a working mom in New Jersey. She transformed something many of us really dread, the daily commute.
Yeah, her shift was quite remarkable and very personal. Instead of just zoning out, scrolling social media, or maybe immediately stressing about work, she intentionally started using her commute time for prayer and scripture meditation. She actually shared, "I used to dread mornings, but now they've become a quiet space to give God my first and best."
Hmm.
It's just a beautiful illustration, isn't it? How a personal, quiet moment, often dismissed as lost time or just frustrating, can become sacred, intentional. She consciously brought her awareness, her presence, her devotion into a time that used to just drain her.
What's so fascinating in both these stories is how these everyday people took things that many would just call ordinary, maybe even boring, and elevated them, made them sacred. It shows this incredible, really accessible power in just shifting perspective, reorienting the heart. But let's be real for a second. It sounds beautiful, but for many of us, our jobs or maybe daily chores, they can feel draining, sometimes even soul-crushing. How does this idea of worship as a lifestyle actually apply when the task itself feels anything but sacred, or when we're just facing frustration or boredom?
That's such a crucial question, because this isn't about pretending things aren't hard or denying stress or difficulty. That wouldn't be honest. The key, I think, is understanding that worship here isn't necessarily about our feelings towards the task itself. It's more about our intention and our attitude as we approach it. It's a choice of orientation, you see. Even when a task is monotonous or really difficult, we can still choose to offer our best effort. We can approach it with integrity or patience, or maybe just a silent prayer for strength to get through it. That's where that living sacrifice idea comes back in. It's not always comfortable, sometimes it's a real struggle, but it's still offered.
Okay, so the core takeaway then, the really critical distinction that these stories and Romans 12.1 are pointing us towards, what is that?
I think the core takeaway, the fundamental shift is this. Worship isn't primarily about performance, it's about presence. It's not about the outward show, or seeking validation from others, or following rituals perfectly to try and impress God or people. It's really about an internal state, an awareness, a devotion that permeates all your actions. When we talk about performance, we often think of doing something for an audience, maybe to earn something. Approval, perhaps, but presence. Presence is about being fully engaged, fully there, fully surrendered in the moment. Regardless of who's watching or what the immediate outcome might be, it's an internal posture of offering.
That really does change everything. It means if you live with purpose daily, consciously orienting your actions, then every single act, potentially, can become sacred. It's understanding that our lives themselves are meant to be offerings. But okay, if it's about presence, does that mean we're supposed to be constantly on? Like perpetually in this state of heightened spiritual awareness? That sounds, well, honestly, exhausting and maybe unsustainable for most of us in the middle of busy modern life. Is there a more sustainable way to cultivate that mindful, intentional presence?
That's a very common and very valid concern. And no, I don't think it means being on in that exhausting, hyper-aware way. That's probably not realistic. It's more about cultivating a disposition of awareness, a general orientation, rather than a constant, intense focus every single second. Think of it maybe like a musician. A musician doesn't perform 24/7, right? But music is always a part of who they are, their identity, their way of seeing the world. For us, it's maybe about recognizing opportunities, small moments throughout the day, to bring intentionality or gratitude or just a spirit of offering into what we're doing. It's often less about grand spiritual gestures and more about subtle, consistent shifts in how we approach, our next breath, our next task, our next conversation.
Okay, that makes sense. So then how can you begin to cultivate this kind of presence, this everyday worship, especially when life feels overwhelming and distractions are everywhere? Are there some practical starting points?
Yes, definitely. There are several really accessible ways to begin. First, maybe try dedicating the start of a new task. Before you say, answer that email, or wash that dish, or start your commute, just take one single deep breath and offer that task silently with intention. It could be as simple as thinking, I offer this task with diligence, or I offer this moment with patience. Second, try cultivating gratitude in unexpected moments. The warmth of your coffee cup, the clean water from the tap, the steady hum of your computer working. These tiny things can become small points of connection, reminders of something greater. It transforms a mundane moment into a little grateful pause. And third, maybe try to embrace the mundane as the training ground. These everyday tasks aren't distractions from a more spiritual life. In this view, they are the spiritual life. The repetitive nature of tasks like, say, doing laundry or folding clothes or even just walking can become a form of active meditation, a quiet space to simply be and to offer your presence. It's definitely not about being perfect at it. It's more about being present little by little in small, cumulative ways.
This whole understanding really encourages us to walk in purpose and truth and worship all through the week, seeing our daily routines, our decisions, our relationships, not just as obligations or things to get through, but as these continuous living opportunities to honor a divine purpose and live out our deepest faith authentically. It becomes a truly holistic approach. It transforms the very act of living into an offering.
It really does. It reaffirms the profound power that each of us has. The power to transform our most ordinary tasks into something sacred. And not by adding lots of religious ceremony, necessarily, but through intentionality, through a mindset of continuous presence, through a conscious offering of our whole selves. It's really not about doing more necessarily, but about doing everything with a deeper, more profound sense of purpose, uncovering the sacred dignity that's already there, hidden within every moment.
So what we've explored today, it truly expands our understanding of worship, doesn't it? Moving it far beyond just a specific time or place and inviting you to see it as this holistic lifestyle that can encompass every single aspect of our existence.
It's a powerful truth. It reveals that our entire lives, when lived with that conscious intention, that spirit of offering, can become a continuous act of devotion, transforming the mundane into the truly meaningful.
So let's circle back to where we started. As you navigate your day, have you ever considered if your most ordinary tasks could be something more than just routines, perhaps even sacred? What part of your own daily routine, maybe just one small part, could you begin to offer with a deeper purpose this week?